Well, hello, everyone, and thanks for being here today. As Liz was saying, this is going to be the first of 6 classes, and I'm really excited to do this because last year when she asked me to do Marketing 101 in an hour, I had to leave out most of what I know. So this is my chance to give you a little bit more insight into some of those areas. Now, I've structured this 6-class series around sort of an interpretation of the marketing hierarchy of effects, interpreting it to transit. And what the hierarchy of effects is a model for how marketing works. And basically it says that in bringing people to use a service such as transit, we have to take them through a series of conditions. And that begins with awareness, creating a positive image. Then we have to give them some knowledge about what a service has to offer, how to use it. We have to motivate them. We have to get them to try it. And then hopefully give them a good enough experience that they become regular riders. And so we are, through the course of our classes, going to work our way through this hierarchy. But today we are starting with awareness and a positive image. How do we go about making people aware that transit even exists, or reminding them that it exists and that it's in their community and that it's a good thing, that it is something that they might want to consider, or even if they don't consider, they might want to support. And so that's where we are today, talking about awareness. Now, as I go through the class today, some of you had some questions, which I'm going to try to answer, but some of the questions you asked relating to websites and things are actually going to get answered more fully in future classes. So if I don't get to the content that you were really hoping for today, it may be because it's in one of those other 5 classes. So, awareness. Awareness building really focuses on 3 things. One is broad visibility. We want to communicate. We want to build awareness with as many people as possible. You want essentially everyone in your community to know you exist. The way we go about doing that is with frequent impressions, by constantly showing them that transit is there and reminding them that transit is there, so that we form a place inside their minds. And then the third part of that is that we want to create that awareness in a positive way. We want to create a positive image as we're making people aware of transit. We want them to think good things about us. So those are the things that we're going to focus on today. And the tools that we use to build awareness, I'm basically have grouped into 4 categories that we're going to talk about. The first is branding of vehicles and bus stops. This is a huge issue in the area of building awareness. The second is using advertising with broad reach to reach that broader community, using earned media or news coverage to get exposure. And then finally, ways that we can use social media to go beyond our current followers and actually begin to build awareness. So those are the 4 topics that I'm going to talk about today in terms of tools for building awareness. But let's start with branding, because branding is marketing at its most basic. And it's really where awareness and image building start. Branding is how we identify a product and everything associated with it. It is recognition at a glance. So when you look at the brands that you see on the screen here, Southwest, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, you don't have to stop and read those logos, read those names. You know immediately, the moment you see them, exactly what they're talking about. When you see one of these logos on anything, whether it's a building or a package or a brochure or an ad, it brings to mind everything that you know about that product. A brand creates a focal point in the consumer's mind for all the experiences they have with a product. So when we talk about rebranding or branding transit, we're usually talking about the visual brand, which is the part that we see, that repository where everybody's going to put all of those other experiences. And that visual brand includes several components. It includes the name and logo. It includes the color scheme. We always see green for Starbucks. It includes the packaging, what the packaging looks like. It includes the signage. It includes how that branding is used on all kinds of things, websites, apps, brochures. That is all part of the visual brand. And the consistency to effective branding consistency is the key to effective branding. Whenever someone sees something associated with a product, you want them to see a consistent image so that it all goes into that same repository in their mind and they get that instant recognition. And the same thing is true for transit as it is for Starbucks. We have a name, we have a logo, we have signage, just like Starbucks has signage on their buildings. We have packaging, and our packaging isn't little things that you see on a shelf or a counter. Our packaging are these great big vehicles, and they're highly visible, and they can be a very effective branding tool. But we also need to carry that same branding, that same consistency through in everything that we do, whether it's a website or a brochure or anything that we're doing that communicates about our transit system. We want to create that immediate recognition, because that's how we get the frequency that I talked about. In order to build awareness in the consumer's mind, we have to have them keep seeing that same image over and over again so they remember it, and it carves out a space in their mind. Now, one thing, as I said, vehicles are a very important part of branding in transit because they are essentially our package. And the thing about transit vehicles is they are seen, vehicles and bus stop signs are seen by thousands of people every day in your community. And in fact, are probably seen by the same people multiple times a day. And so they create that broad awareness and that frequency that is so important to building awareness. Our vehicles are an opportunity to communicate using our capital investments. We always have more capital money than we do marketing money, right? So why not use some of that capital investment as a marketing tool? Because they create long-term marketing value. Once a vehicle is branded, it's out there on the street for 5 or 10 years, being seen by thousands of people a day. That is effective branding. So branding of buses and bus stops is probably the most cost-effective thing that we can do from a marketing point of view. I'm going to tell you a little story, because often, when people talk about, well, we want to brand our system or we want to rebrand our system, but how do we even go about that? What are the things that we even need to think about? And so I'm going to tell you a story about rebranding one system to kind of give you an idea of how to go about it. This is from Durango, Colorado, and this is from about 15 years ago. They had a real lack of branding. You see some images here that show what their system looked like. They were called the Durango Lift. This is what their buses looked like. There was a little logo up there you could barely see. They had a red trolley on one route. They had signage that was pretty inconsistent on the street. So not a whole lot of visibility. And we went out in the community, we talked with folks, and what we kept hearing over and over again was, we have transit in this community? Oh yeah, we know about the red trolley on Main Street, but other buses, we don't even know about that. So they were invisible. Their identity had nothing to do with the community. Also, it almost miscommunicated what they were about because it was called the lift. And in their world, the lift referred to a ski resort that they used to go to, but they didn't go to anymore. But for many people, lift, of course, implies disability and needing a lift in order to board in a wheelchair. And so that sounded like the service might be limited to people with disabilities. So not a good brand. So they decided to rebrand, and they had a couple of objectives. Durango has a very historic downtown, and it has a railroad history. So they wanted to tie into that railroad history and that, feeling of the downtown area. And they also wanted to capitalize on the one good thing they had going for them, which was the red trolley, because that was the only thing people knew about. So how could we capitalize on that? So they decided to create an identity that incorporated historic railroad style and the color red. Just a couple of things, really simple things to go on. So we went to a railroad museum and found a lot of railroad logos, and they look like that. And so created a logo that looked like a railroad logo that used the color red and that clearly communicated that this was a transit system. This was a system for everyone. In fact, used the letter T, an international symbol for transit that we knew would even be recognized by the non-English speaking tourists that come to Durango, because Durango is very popular with Europeans, oddly enough. Now, you might look at this and go, well, that's not the most exciting logo I've ever seen. I don't like that as much as some other logos I've seen. And that's one of the things that I want to impress on you. Branding is not necessarily always about what we like. It is about what works. It is about what communicates the relevant information, the relevant perception that we want people to have about a system. So that was the logo that was created, and that was then carried through consistently in bus stop signage, on the trolleys, and then we had to figure out what to do with the buses. This is where the real difference was made, because here we have consistency between bus stops and trolleys, but here is where we have an opportunity to really change the view of transit by going from those white buses to something that looks like this. The very same bus suddenly isn't invisible anymore. It doesn't look like an RV or a delivery vehicle. It looks like a bus now, and an eye-catching one that people are going to see and remember. In fact, people suddenly thought they had 10 times as many buses as they used to because they were seeing them everywhere. And that had an impact on ridership. So they went from this to this, and 15 years later, this is where they are. So keep in mind that if you decide to brand a system, it is a long-term commitment. You want to create an image that you're going to use for a long time. And go back to that idea that vehicles and bus stops are seen by thousands of people, and your capital investments are an opportunity to communicate with those thousands of people over the course of many years. So I'm just going to take you through and show you some other examples, just to kind of give you a feeling for just how important branding is in terms of building awareness. This is a bus in Concord, New Hampshire. And, you know, you look at this bus and you might think, who's that for? Maybe a social service vehicle, or, you know, maybe just invisible. Maybe you don't even notice it going down the street. Well, they just recently rebranded. So this is what their vehicles look like now. Nobody misses them going down the street. The bright green on the front of the bus sets it apart from other vehicles that look like that, because cutaway vehicles do have a tendency to look like every other thing on the street. In Concord, they also operate demand response service for seniors and people with disabilities, which operates outside the city of Concord. And so they did companion branding for the two services, green for the general public service and blue with the name Mid-State Transit for their broader county services, so that all at once, everybody knew that there were not only transit service in this area, but that there were two different flavors of transit service. This is a very different example. This is from Yosemite Area Regional Transit, which operates into the Yosemite National Park and connects various communities with that park. They used to operate buses that looked like this, looked a lot like tour buses. And in fact, most people thought they were tour buses, didn't realize that they were public transit buses that you could catch at stops all along the way. And so they rebranded to make that public transit information really clear. So instead of just being YARTS, they are now YARTS, Public Transit to Yosemite. At the same time, made the buses a lot more eye-catching and significantly increased their ridership base. This is from Bakersfield, California, a countywide service in Kern County. Not a bad bus, you know, not bad branding, regional transit, but not something that anyone's going to notice or look at. They rebranded, changed their name to Kern Transit so they communicate what the region was that they served, brought in the poppy, which is sort of a popular image for that area, turned it into a wheel, and made the buses a lot brighter, a lot more identifiable, and a lot easier for people to become aware of. This is from far northern California, a very rural county called Modoc. They operate the Sage Stage. And while they have a great little network of services that go very long distances to other communities, they had a very old-fashioned look, and a look that probably made people think, oh, you know, this is just a bus that's, you know, for someone who doesn't have any other options. So they rebranded those buses to be eye-catching, to tie in with the local geography, to give them a fresh look. Same buses, new look, and then to communicate some specific information on them, specifically what communities they serve. Because like I said, they went a long ways to Redding, to Reno, to, you know, far distant from their home base, to let people know that service was available in that region. Another system that, while their branding was perfectly good, nothing wrong with it, it simply did not provide an up-to-date awareness building image. And so they rebranded from Calaveras Transit to Calaveras Connect. Made sure that the front of their buses was a distinct color so people would see them coming. Left some space here for selling advertising, because they do sell some ads on their buses. Tied in the bus stop signs to their buses so they had a consistent image. And then finally, this last one is a bus that doesn't even exist yet. This is the Sedona Shuttle. Sedona, Arizona is implementing a new transit system starting in March. And this will be what their buses look like going in. Sedona is a very touristy area. It's known for its red rocks, as you see in the logo. And this look, this brand was intended to tie in with their tourism marketing, and to create an image that both locals and tourists would feel comfortable riding. Hence the name shuttle rather than transit, because tourists often relate to the idea of a shuttle. So those are, you know, a bunch of very different examples. And I hope what they show you is that branding is unique to each community, and it should reflect your community and the passengers that you want to serve. With that in mind, as I said before, it is the most cost-effective way to build visibility. Let's say you spend $10,000 for a bus wrap, which is what this bus wrap might cost. And let's say it's seen by 5,000 people a day as it moves around your towns, as it moves around your county. It's on the road 5 days a week, probably, maybe 250 days a year. If it has a service life of 5 years, as many cutaways do, that's over 6 million exposures. And that comes out to about 0.0016 cents per exposure. Very small cost per exposure. And it's paid for with your capital dollars, money that you're already spending to buy that bus. So keep in mind that branding is a very cost-effective way to build visibility. Okay, how are we doing? We're doing good on time. Okay, so let's go beyond basic branding to think about other ways that we build awareness. In every marketing effort has 4 parts. There's the objective, what is it we're trying to accomplish? There's the target market, who are we talking to? The message and the medium. Okay, now when we're thinking about awareness, that is the objective. You know, what we're trying to do is to create that broad awareness I talked about. The target market is then the broad population. Sometimes it might be a subset of the population, but often we really want to create awareness among everyone in our community. Messages generally have 3 parts. There's information we want to convey, there's an appeal we want to make, and there's an image that we want to present. And we'll talk a little bit about how those in a awareness building campaign tend to be relatively general, because we want information, appeals, and images that appeal to this broad population we're communicating with. And then finally, the medium. We're going to talk about advertising, we're going to talk about earned media, and we're going to talk about social media. So let's start with messaging. We've already said our objective is awareness. Our target market is the broad population. Let's talk about messaging and how messaging works. The first part of messaging is information. What is it that we want to convey? Information might be the type of service we provide, where it goes, what it costs, trip planning tools, how to make a reservation. But in the case of awareness, we're usually up here at the top of this list. We're talking about fairly broad generalities. What type of service do you provide? You know, is it regular fixed route bus service, or is it a demand response type of service? And where it goes can be a really important part of that information. Is it a countywide service? Is it over a large region, or is it specifically in one community? That's usually the amount of information that you want to get into a really awareness building effort. Now, if we were going a little further and trying to generate ridership, we'd get down into more details. In terms of appeals, we're talking about the benefits that are relevant to the target group that you're speaking to. Transit appeals basically fall into two groups, what I call personal benefits and societal benefits. Personal benefits are the things that are relevant to people that are going to use transit or might consider using transit. Basic mobility, convenience, time savings, time value, economy, having an economical way to travel, safety, that's taken on a much greater importance in the post-COVID era, of course. Those are things that are relevant to potential riders. And different things are going to be more relevant to different target groups. But some things are relevant to everybody, basic mobility and convenience probably being among them. This other set of benefits are what I call societal benefits. Those are things that are relevant to everyone, whether they use public transit or not. Economic benefits, what it does for the community's economy, gets people to work, gets people to shopping, allows the economy to function. Environmental benefits, what does it do environmentally? Reducing congestion, reducing emissions. And then something that I think has become increasingly important to all of us in the last couple of years, mobility equity, that transit provides equity for people who may not have other transportation options and allows them to get to the essential places they need to go, whether that's work or school or medical appointments or grocery stores. I think that has become a really important part of the social benefits that we want to communicate. So when you're thinking about the things that you want to communicate in your awareness building, you want to stay with things that are going to appeal to a fairly broad audience, because you're probably communicating with that broad community. And if you just talk about the economy of using transit, that may not be relevant to some people. But if you keep the messages fairly broad, where you go, providing basic mobility, providing equity, those are things that generally everyone can relate to. The other thing to keep in mind is the kind of imagery that you show in your messaging. One of the questions that somebody asked was about breaking down the barriers of only certain people ride the bus. The bus is just for the elderly, or the bus is just for people with disabilities, or whatever. One way that we can do that is to make sure that our imagery shows the different sorts of people that use transit and that we want to use transit. Seniors do ride the bus, and that may be an important target group for many of you. For others, it may be young people, college students, young people in their first jobs, high school students even, or it may be a mix of people. So make sure that the imagery in your ads relates to the sorts of people that use transit and that you want to use transit, so that when folks are seeing your awareness building messages, they're getting the message that, oh, this is for everyone. And then the final part of a message is the call to action. What is it that you want someone to do as a result of having seen or heard your message? And in the case of awareness building, often all we want is for them to remember that they have a transit option, to simply know that we're there in case the need arises, or the need arises among their family members or a friend or someone else they're talking to. In other cases, you might actually want them to visit your website to get more information or take a trial ride. There are lots of other things that we may want people to do, but in awareness building, often simply remembering who we are and what we do and having a good impression of us is enough of a call to action. So this is an example, this is from San Diego actually, of an awareness building message. And remember I said in awareness building, we're often staying with very high level basic messaging. So this says, choose transit, shorter waits, quicker trips, new high frequency routes. So some really basic information, a picture of the vehicle so you know what type of service they're talking about, but pretty much an awareness building message. The same thing with this companion message. I choose transit, my commute, my time. You know, she's getting at a specific appeal, an appeal that's really relevant to commuters, and obviously they're interested in commuters here, but she's not getting into any details or a specific route or how much it costs or when it runs. She's just creating a very positive impression of the service and the type of person that rides it. From a more rural point of view, these are some pieces from the Morongo Basin, which is a very rural system in Southern California. And here they're saying, set yourself free from asking for rides. Okay, they're appealing to a younger audience with this particular piece, but just giving some really basic information. Set yourself free. Telling people how to get more information if they want it using Google Maps. But again, a pretty general message. Same thing here with the print ad on the right. Set yourself free to go your own way. Showing a different type of person here. So we've got some variety in terms of who uses the bus, but with the same basic message, and the call to action being that you can use Google Maps to plan a trip if you want to try and use transit. I said that when I talked about branding, that consistency is the key to effective branding. And consistency is also the key to building awareness with other kinds of messaging. You can maximize your efforts by having consistent messaging in everything you do. So for example, here, you might have a print ad. This is obviously a post-COVID effort of trying to encourage people to come back to transit. So a print ad that says mask on, phone on, get on and go. Clean, easy, ready for you. Very basic message. The call to action is to download the transit app to get simplified information. That same messaging might be presented in color in a poster, or it might be reformatted as a bus poster. It might be used in a social media post or a Spanish social media post. All of these are basically the same artwork. And that's one of the points I want to make here, is that in addition to creating consistency of message, if you have someone helping you to create materials, create artwork, get the most out of that effort. Create them the same imagery, the same message in various formats. It's not going to cost you a lot more. And then you're going to be able to use it more broadly and get more value out of the marketing assistance that you get. And that's whether you're hiring someone to do it or you're using a staff person in-house to do it, and you're looking at their time value. Get the most out of your effort. So that was messaging. Now let's talk about how to get those messages out. And I want to start by talking about something that we own, and that's going back to buses and bus shelters. I said they were great for branding, but they can communicate more than just the brand. And I've already shown you this example, the Sage Stage example, where I showed you that in addition to the logo on the bus, it's got a phone number, it's got a web address, and it's got the service area defined by the communities that it goes to. So this bus is actually a little rolling ad for the service. Another way to use the buses is with window clings. This is from another system for about $100 each. these little window clings basically become ads on the sides of the buses, but not ads for somebody else, ads for yourself. Now, someone did ask me about how to attract local businesses to want to advertise on your buses, to buy ads on the outside of your buses. And my comment to that would be, do you really want them to? Because if you sell that space on the outside of your buses, you are selling part of your identity. You're selling an opportunity that you could use to market yourselves. And I understand that revenue can be attractive, but you need to balance what revenue you can actually get for that space, which may be quite limited, with two things: with the opportunity value you're giving up, but also with the cost of selling it. Because if you have to devote staff time to actually going out and talking to people and getting it arranged, you may not actually be making a whole lot. So keep that in mind when you think about selling advertising on your buses. But I totally believe that using those buses for our own purposes can be extremely effective. This is another example of a rear window cling, advertising the fact that they're doing free rides every Tuesday, something that people going down the street behind the bus will see, become aware of, and maybe take advantage of. This is a little bolder, bigger use of advertising on the side of the buses. These are actually partial wraps. These were used by a system in Victor Valley, California, to promote that they have free Wi-Fi on their buses, that you could use Google Maps to plan your trips. So they were promoting the fact that they were a technologically advanced system, something that, presents a good image of the system, makes people think, oh, transit, they've got Wi-Fi and, they're up to date. They might be a possibility. The same thing in bus shelters. Bus shelter posters can create that same kind of messaging opportunity. Typically we sell this space to other companies to advertise themselves, but maybe we should be using it to advertise ourselves. So buses and bus shelters come back around for a second time. But let's move on to other communication media that we can use. Besides transit advertising, which are essentially billboards, let's look at things like newspapers, posters, radio, television, and then I'm going to talk about some more targeted opportunities. This first set of opportunities are very broad messaging media, things that kind of reach the whole community. So for example, newspaper. If you are in a small community, which many of you are, your local newspaper may be the primary way that people get local news. And as such, it can be a very effective marketing channel. When using newspaper, keep in mind, one, that you're communicating with a broad audience. So try to create your messaging in a way that'll be relevant to a broad audience. But also keep in mind that a lot of people don't read the newspaper in print at all anymore. They're reading it on the newspaper's website. And so having digital versions of your ads on the website can be very effective and often not very expensive. The real advantage of the digital ads is that people can click on them and click directly through to your website to get more information if they're interested. But in this particular example, you can see this is from Cottonwood, Arizona, and they operate a shuttle that goes over to Sedona, a direct route that runs every 45 minutes all day, and people can use it to get jobs. And so that is a message that's appealing to quite a lot of people in Cottonwood, and therefore was something that was worth using the newspaper to communicate, to build greater visibility, greater awareness of that service. This is a series of ads that was used by a system that was rebranding, that was introducing this new name, Calaveras Connect. And they wanted to communicate that Calaveras Transit is now Calaveras Connect, but that's not all that's new. So they wanted to tie that basic message of their rebranding to some other improvements that they were making. They wanted people to know who they were, and also that they went to the college 8 times a day, and that they had direct pickups, and that you could get information in Google Maps. So tying really basic awareness message with a little bit more information about the service. Now, beyond newspaper, posters can be really effective tools for creating awareness, because there are probably a lot of places in your community where you can post posters. Places like laundromats and grocery stores, anywhere that there are billboards in public buildings, at schools or colleges. They can be a very inexpensive way to build visibility, to be where a lot of people see your imagery. This is a poster that was put up at a school, so it has a very targeted message for the parents at that school, the safe, easy way to get your kids to school on time. This is a poster that was introducing service changes for Calaveras Connect. So this is something they would have put up all over the community to let people know that they were completely revamping their system, that they were introducing a lot of new services post-COVID, and to let folks know what they are, but with a big visual image that would catch somebody's attention, because people often look at maps and like to look at maps, and that draws them into the image. This is a poster that was put up in employment sites to let employees know that they have an easy way to get to work on transit. Inexpensive to print, basically printed out on an office printer, put it up in the break rooms of 30 or 40 employers in a region, and that creates a lot of visibility. Not the kind of broad visibility like you might get with a newspaper ad that everyone sees, but visibility among a population that has a specific need for the service. And that can be an important way of building awareness too. And these are just some posters that promoted a free ride day in English and Spanish, and things that might have been put up at libraries, grocery stores, anywhere around community to let people know that there was going to be a free ride day and they could give transit a try. Now, another awareness building tool that kind of takes posters to the next step are information displays. These can have really long-term value. They can be put at social service offices, medical offices, colleges or schools, public buildings, virtually anywhere that you have a lot of people filtering through, sitting and waiting for a time. Having an information display there can remind them that transit is available, not only to this location, but within their community. There are a lot of little prefabricated sign holders like this or like this that you can purchase fairly inexpensively. And then once they're in place, simply by keeping the information up to date, you essentially have a permanent advertising vehicle in a critical space where a lot of people are going to see it. And I know that displays like this in social service and medical offices can be incredibly effective in building visibility among a group that really can use public transit. Now, TV and radio advertising. Earlier in my career, I would have said these were hands down some of your best advertising vehicles, because they had the opportunity to show people using transit, to talk to people, to catch them in their cars. The problem is that not so many people listen to broadcast television and radio anymore. And they're really only effective options if you are in a unique media market. If you are an isolated community where, you know, people listen to the local radio station, or if you have a local TV station. In that case, you know, they can still be effective tools for getting the word out. If you're in an area where most of your media is coming from outside the area, from a bigger community, or if most people are using streaming services for their media, then you're not going to get that kind of broad audience that you want to get for awareness building. If you are in a situation where
the Birdie Shuttle is
still
the fast,
works,
frequent, and affordable way to travel between Cottonwood and Sedona. It runs all day, every day, direct from the Cottonwood Library to convenient stops throughout Sedona. It's just that easy. The $2 fare gets you between Cottonwood and Sedona, or hop on and hop off in Sedona for only $1 a ride. Click on the transit icon in Google Maps and get detailed directions for riding the Birdie Shuttle. Or check out verdeshuttle.com for easy trip planning, real-time bus arrival info, and everything you need to know. The Verde Shuttle, Cottonwood to Sedona. It's just that easy. The Verde Shuttle is the fast, frequent, and affordable.
Getting it to stop is hard. As you saw in that little spot, it used all those same messaging rules that I talked about earlier. It provided information. It used imagery of people using the bus that are of different demographic groups that you would want people to know, hey, everyone uses the bus. It presented a positive image. It talked about the appeals of using transit. In this case, it specifically was focused on ridership-oriented appeals because it was intended to be a ridership building piece. But just seeing that vehicle, seeing that it goes between Cottonwood and Sedona, that was a big awareness building message as well. I want to now talk about a couple of tools that are a little more targeted. You know, the ones we've been talking about are relatively general in terms of reaching the broad community, but there are some tools that you may want to use to reach a more limited audience. And one of those is targeted publications. In Cottonwood, for example, there's a newcomer packet that goes out to every person that moves into the community. And the transit system advertises in that little publication because they want new people moving in the community to know that they have transit services available. You may be in a community where tourists are a target group for you, and there may be tourism magazines, or there may be special events that happen during the year that everybody participates in, like a county fair or something, and you may want to include your messaging in those programs. The things I would say to think about in selecting those kind of publications is to get ones that have broad reach, that will reach a population that's significant and that you're interested in reaching. And even better if they have long-term value. If it's something like a newcomer packet or a tourism piece that is handed out throughout the year so that once you buy your ad, it's seen by people over a period of time. That can be a really selling point for those kind of publications. Now, the other targeted tool I want to talk about, and this is one that I am a real believer in, and that is direct mail. In the past, you know, a lot of systems use direct mail that came in envelopes, that was part of a coupon pack or something. And I found that the vast majority of those were just thrown away and weren't very useful. But what I have found in recent years to be extremely useful is every door direct mail. It is a product of the Postal Service, and basically what it does is delivers oversized postcards, large postcards, up to legal size, so big, to every household within a defined area. There are a couple of advantages to it in that you don't need to have a mailing list. You just pick places on a map, and I'll show you how you do that in a bit. And that it's a very low cost tool. It costs about, I think, 17 cents a piece to mail, whatever it costs to print you, but you can literally reach every household for about 20 cents each. Now, this is an example of a piece that was for a demand response service, a new demand response service in an area that hadn't had transit before. So communicating, do you need a ride to Pine Grove or Jackson? And some really basic information on the front of the piece. So the front was intended to be a real awareness builder. The back provided more detailed information, exactly where the service went, when it ran, and how to plan a trip, and the fact that you had to wear a mask. So it got in, the nice thing about these pieces is you can have an image message on one side, and then you can give them more details on the back. The other real advantage is that because they are bright and bold and big, and they're flat, there's no envelope, they're not folded up. Even if people are going to throw them in the recycle bin, chances are they're going to look at them in between the mailbox and the recycle bin. They communicate very quickly, and that's what we want with an awareness message. So these go a bit beyond awareness, but can be used as an awareness building tool. This is another example from Victor Valley Transit. This is sort of the awareness side, set yourself free to go your own way, and then a free ride offer, ride free for 5 days. On the back, there's a map of the service area, some basic information about using the service, getting information in Google Maps, and then a 5 free day pass offer, something that the person could clip out, take on the bus, and get their free day passes. This little indicia up here in the corner that you see, that is all that has to be printed on them to get them delivered. There's no mailing list. There's no, having to address every piece. It's a very simple process. And most local, even quick printers can help you with the process. Just as a really quick illustration of how this works, this is the mapping tool within Every Door Direct Mail. You can put in the name of your community. I'm going to put in Cottonwood, Arizona, because I've been doing some stuff there, so I know it'll come up quickly. And you can see you get a little map that shows all the postal carrier routes in Cottonwood. And if I mouse over one, okay, so I've got this area that's kind of out on the edge of town. It tells me up across the top that there are 800 people that live there, 47 businesses. I can specify an age range I'm interested in, and it'll tell me what % of the people are in that age range. It tells me a little bit about income, and it'll tell me how much it's going to cost me to mail something to each of them. So I click on it and it says it's 847 addresses. It'll cost me $169.40 in postage to mail to. So very simple tool to use if you're thinking about doing something like direct mail, because you can specifically pick those postal carrier routes that are within your service area and that are along your routes. And I apologize for the helicopter. I live next door to a hospital. So direct mail can be an inexpensive and very effective way to build awareness, particularly if you're introducing a new service or you have a specific service that you feel could be performing better than it is and you want to up its ridership. How are we doing for time? Okay, so the final thing I want to talk a little bit about is social media advertising. We can do the same sort of thing with social media advertising that we can with direct mail to a much lesser extent. And it provides the advantage of being able to advertise to people, and have them click through directly to a landing page or to a website. You can target social media advertising by community. You can pick people that live in a specific community. You can target some specific demographics such as age, and you can target based on interests. So you can select people who have liked websites relating to other specific things in your community if you want to get a message out. This is an example of an awareness campaign for the Northwest Connector in coastal Oregon. The Northwest Connector is a coalition of 5 transit agencies in coastal Oregon that teamed up to market their services to people coming from Portland and Salem out to the coast. And so they had been thinking about, well, how can we advertise to people in Portland and Salem? They're big markets, they're huge numbers of people. How do we find the right people? And so we decided to do that with social media advertising. And they specifically targeted people that lived in those key communities and had expressed interest both in public transit and in the Oregon coast. So people that were already using public transit, were liking their local public transit system, and had looked at websites for the Oregon coast. So we knew that was a pretty good target group. The messaging they used was availability of direct service between the communities and the coast, images of the coastal destination. So that imagery let people know, oh, this is what you could connect to on transit. And then finally, getting the call to action was to get them to click through to the website to find out more about how to plan a trip and what kind of trips were available. They combined the social media messaging with an on-transit campaign in the target communities, Portland and Salem. So people on the buses that were using the buses and trains there were seeing these images on board their vehicles, and then hopefully also getting social media ads so they would get a reinforced message and be able to click through. And I would tell you that that campaign was a great success. It started out being a great success. Unfortunately, it launched in February of 2020. And we saw an immediate spike in visits to the website. And then March 2020 came along, and well, you know the rest of the story. Okay, let's talk a little bit. We don't have too much time left. I'm going slower than I should. Let's talk about earned media, about news media. News media can be another way to build visibility. Like I said, local newspaper in small communities, you know, seen by a lot of people, but you don't have control over what they print about you. But you do have influence. And the way you can use that influence is to have a proactive relationship with your local news media. And the best way to create that relationship is by making their job easier, by providing them with timely, well-written news releases. Having a news release calendar, having specific things that you want to communicate, and then getting news releases out on a timely basis. So things that you might want to communicate in news releases: new or changing services, new vehicles or facilities, new passenger information tools, special events, free fares, milestones, whatever you're doing that is newsworthy, that can make an interesting story, put it on a news release calendar and plan to get news releases out to the media. And how to get them to pay attention to and print your news releases? Well, one way is to write them in a way that makes their life easier. Write like a reporter. So have a lead paragraph that tells them who, what, when, where, and why. Get all of that key information into a lead paragraph, such as, you know, Transit Equity Day is February 4th, and our system will be offering free rides throughout XYZ County. That would be a who, what, when, where, why kind of lead. Then organize the rest of the information in the news release from most important to least important. Because if they only have so much space in the newspaper or on their website, you know, they're going to put the most, they're going to cut from the bottom. So you want to get all the important information in the first few paragraphs. Use short sentences and clear language. Sentences shouldn't be more than 20 words long, and you want to be writing at the level of maybe an 8th grader. Write in a facts-oriented educational fashion. Don't try to sell. If you make it sound like an ad, they're not going to use it. If you want to include opinions or interpretations of the facts, be sure to include those as quotes from an agency representative, such as, you know, the general manager of XYZ Transit says that this will be a great boon for our community, or something along those lines. That's the way that you get your selling in. If you'd like more information about writing news releases, some guidelines, drop me an email after this webinar and I will be happy to send you those. The final thing that I'm going to talk about quickly is social media. Now, social media is primarily a tool for engaging with riders. However, it can be leveraged to help build visibility. So when we think about social media, we have a lot to choose from. But the thing to remember is that YouTube and Facebook are the most widely used online platforms, and they are most broadly representative of the population. Instagram is number 3 and is more popular with younger people. So between those 3, those are probably the critical ones if you want to reach a broad audience. The things that we're normally using social media for are engaging with our followers, regular communications, conveying news, alerts, events, those kind of things. But if we want to build awareness using social media, this is just talking to the people that already know about us. If we want to build awareness, we need to do a couple things. One is to post items that our followers will want to repost and encourage them to share those items. And the second is to engage with stakeholders and other community organizations, to follow them, to ask them to follow you, to repost their content, ask them to repost your content. Because in that way, you can begin to broaden beyond your own base of followers and have more people see your posts. So posts that followers will share. This is a ticket giveaway that Suntran was doing. People might want to post that. Stuff the bus. You know, people would want to share that with their friends to let them know, hey, here's the place that you can bring a toy for a needy kid. Pictures or videos that followers will share, things that are very visual that they might find interesting and want to share with other people. You can actually tell people to share things, tell everybody February 4th is Transit Equity Day, everybody rides free. That might be a message that they want to share, and that encourages them to share it. In terms of stakeholders, thinking about things that your stakeholders will want to share, whether it's surveys about what kind of transit services are needed in your community. Maybe you have an advisory committee opening and you want to invite people to apply. You could ask stakeholders to share that with a broader audience. And then engaging with other organizations and community events. A blood drive, letting people know they can take the bus to a blood drive, and encouraging the blood drive to let people know they can take the bus to the blood drive. Clean air type events. Encouraging people to attend a health and resource fair, and that they can use the bus to get there. So finding ways to engage with other organizations and to get your message out to their constituencies as well as to your own. In terms of increasing your reach through social media, include social media links on your website, so that people can see that you're on social media, and ask outreach participants to follow you when you're out in the community making a presentation, because I know that's going to be possible again in the near future, we hope. Encourage them to like you on Facebook, to follow you, to share your information with their friends and family that might be interested. So I said that awareness building was about three things: about broad visibility, about frequent impressions, reminding people over and over again that we're there, and about creating a positive image. And we talked about a lot of tools for doing that. We talked about branding of vehicles and bus stops being the most cost-effective thing we can do. We talked about a variety of kinds of advertising, whether it's using our own advertising on our buses and shelters, or newspaper advertising, or going further afield and using print and radio and TV advertising, or even social media advertising. Really thinking about what is most relevant in your community, what is going to allow you to create that broad visibility that you want to create. Earned media, we talked about making life easy for the news media by providing them with good news releases, well-written news releases. And then finally, about leveraging our social media to go beyond our existing followers and reach out to a broader audience. So that was awareness building. We'll be back on February 10th at 2 p.m. To talk about customer-focused websites, which are probably one of the most important communication tools that we have as transit systems. The third session will also focus on passenger information beyond the website, looking at passenger guides and signage and other ways of reaching folks that maybe aren't as digitally inclined. And with that, I'm Selena Barlow. Thank you for listening. And I'm going to turn it back over to Liz to talk a little bit, guide the questions, and get us into the workshop.
Okay, thank you so much, Selena. And that was really great. So we now we have a time for questions. You're now able to unmute yourself. If you can raise your hand if you want to ask it verbally, or feel free to put it into the chat. I will just draw your attention to a couple things that were put into the chat. Jennifer said that using the direct mail has been a really great tool for her, and they've had success recruiting drivers with that type of advertising. So that's a really good idea. I know that's a big challenge right now. And then also Jamie had suggested about the news media. She used to work in a newspaper, and then it's really great if you provide some photos or other graphics that they can easily use. That'll make their job easier. So those are a couple good ideas. And yeah, Selena, would you mind putting your email in the chat? And we will, right, great. So does anyone have any questions right now? I mean, that was very comprehensive, but if you have questions, maybe about taking some of these things and really implementing them in your community and your transit system, this is a great chance to use this resource. And just a reminder, we will be posting the slides and this portion of the presentation, the recording, so you'll be able to share it with others and revisit it if you need to. Okay, yeah, someone mentioned that making sure that your photos are high resolution when you share them, so that's very important. Someone asked for resources for window clings. Do you have companies, and I don't know if those are more local or more or kind of best practices when searching for a company for window clings?
I would simply look at your local signage company. Pretty much any company that does signage regularly, that does any kind of vehicle signage, can do those window clings.
Okay, great.
Because those were done in Calaveras, San Andreas, California, which is a middle of nowhere type of community. So if they could manage it, I'm sure everyone can.
Right, and having the window clings where the passengers can look out, very important.
So they're the perforated vinyl, yeah.
Right. So earlier in the presentation, my colleague Nellie pasted a link to our marketing toolkit. So we can paste that again in the chat, but that is something that Selena, we worked together on and really documented a lot of this information and includes other resources, both templates and marketing, graphics and things like that. It is on our list of kind of getting a refresh coming up, just getting some new photos and graphics, because if you've been using it, you might want something new. So, if anyone is interested in providing us feedback of something you're really looking for that we should add, please let us know. We'll be reaching out and hopefully getting to work on that this year. But take a look at that. It's a great resource, and it has worksheets to help you think step by step about what your marketing plans should be, what you're trying to achieve, your markets, and all those strategies. So that's a great resource. Okay, well, I'm not seeing a lot of, there's a couple, check out the chat for a little bit more conversation back and forth about window clings. And otherwise, I think we'll move on to the workshop portion. So I'm going to give just a couple other quick updates for those people who are not hanging around for that, but we really welcome everyone to stay. So if you want to share those slides again, Selena.
Okay.
Okay, so just plugging a couple upcoming events. You'll see the next marketing workshop series here. And again, we were just waiting on launching registration to make sure that this format worked well, which I think it is so far. So we will send a follow-up email to all the registrants of this workshop when the slides and recording are posted, and then when the registration is available for the next one. And we'll try to give you the dates. We have tentative dates for the rest of the series, but kind of one step at a time. So we do, these actually are out of order, I realized, but too late. So we have some upcoming events, roundtables, Twitter chats, a nice second year that we're doing a relaxation webinar. I know we can all use it, especially during these crazy times. And then a kind of a transit book group. So some fun things and some training focused things. And I do want to draw everyone's attention to not a national RTAP event, but just so everyone's aware of the FMCSA entry-level driver training requirement changes that are effective on February 7th. FTA and FMCSA are hosting a webinar. I think it's next Thursday, January 20th. So just something to know about if you have any CDL drivers, you're going to want to make sure you understand that rule and how you're going to have to maybe change your training with regard to that. And then another thing is just to get it on everybody's calendar, but we'll share more later. We are going to be having a transit knowledge sharing retreat that we're working with some other partners in Erie, Pennsylvania in June. So really looking forward to having that. Hopefully it'll be safe at that point. So just keep that on your radar. We'd love for you all to join us. Okay, next slide. And then we also have a webinar on our Tackle Library, which is a technical assistance coordination library that we run with the other FTA technical assistance centers. And it is a place to find all kinds of transportation coordination resources. So where you're coordinating with other organizations that offer transportation in your community. So there's a webinar in February just about how to best use that resource. Okay, next slide. Okay, I think that's it for me. And I will put in the chat as we're going through the workshop, I'll put that link for the ELDT FMCSA webinar in there. So, okay. Selena?
Okay. Well, I think this is the way we're going to go about the workshop. I have got 4 names of people who have committed that they want to participate. And then after that, we'll open it up to anybody else if we have some time. And we will let you share your screen so you can show us what you want to show us, and then we'll talk about it. So the first name I have here is Miranda Lambert from McDonough County, Hannock County Public Transportation. And Miranda looks like not Miranda.
Well, I'm Liz Taylor, so we're a very famous group here today. Miranda, did you want to kick it off, or did we have 4 people who volunteered?
Yes, I actually have Pete, my assistant transit director,
Great.
on, so he's going to share since he has been the one taking the lead on our Go West advertisement. So he's on and will share.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to stop the recording and